So welcome back. We were discussing about the fluid properties, right? So we have clearly discussed what is Bernoulli's principle, which states that fluid properties. In the case of fluid properties, so one is the Bernoulli's principle. What states is the pressure energy P plus half rho V square, which is the kinetic energy, plus rho G H, which is the potential energy, is always maintained constant. Now, there are quite a number of applications that we can think of in the case of this Bernoulli's principle. Whenever we notice, suppose if we throw a ball, so there are two different cases. Whenever we play cricket, right? So there are two different type of balls actually we usually discuss. One is the fast ball, another is the spin ball. Now the spin ball actually, if you notice the way it goes, right, it is very difficult to predict in the case of the spin ball. The reason behind that is the Bernoulli's principle. See this, suppose actually when the ball is like this, then let us say the air is flowing in this direction. Obviously the air actually will always flow in the opposite direction because the ball is actually moving in one particular direction. Suppose if the car is moving, automatically we feel that there is a resistance force that is coming due to the air, which essentially means that there is a flow of air in the opposite direction. So we are moving, there is a counter force that is exactly coming opposite to us. Now here in this particular case, when the ball is actually moving like this, then the air friction, what it is going to offer at the top and the bottom is exactly the same. So the velocity of the particles at this point and the velocity of the air particles at the bottom, both are actually exactly the same case. Now against to this, let us say this is the ball velocity. So this is the air velocity. Now the ball velocity and air velocity, the relative velocity is at the top, that is VA minus VB, and here also VA minus VB is exactly the same in both the cases. Now this is actually usually the case of the normal way the ball is going. And this is actually is discussed as the fast ball, let us say. Fast ball meaning the speed itself will decide. And the speed of this entire ball. So the batsman actually has to bear the speed, and then actually he has to quite a hard force actually he has to give it so that the ball moves in the opposite direction, obviously. Now the other case is the spin ball. Now spin ball, if you notice, the air is moving in this direction and this is the ball, and then if there is a rotation of this ball, let us say this ball is actually moving in this particular direction. Now let us say the peripheral velocity of this ball, we are not talking about this linear velocity. So this is what actually we say that linear velocity, this is what we treated this as the ball velocity here. Now there is another velocity called the peripheral velocity that usually comes only in the spin ball. So this comes only in the spin ball. So there is a peripheral velocity, let us say that peripheral velocity is of VR and the air velocity is VA. Then if you notice the relative velocity between the ball periphery and the air. So at the top, if you notice, the velocity is moving in this direction. This is the air velocity, and the relative velocity is, which is nothing but the difference of the velocities, including the direction. So VA minus of it is in the opposite direction. So minus VR. So this is minus VR is taken just because it is in the opposite direction. So this is VA plus VR at the top level. So at the top level, the air velocity or the relative velocity with respect to ball surface is VA plus VR. And at bottom, actually, if you notice, the ball is actually spinning in this direction. Hence, the velocity of the spin is VR. That is, the peripheral velocity of the ball is VR and the velocity of the air is VA. The relative velocity being exactly in the same direction at the bottom, the relative velocity is VA minus VR. So this is the bottom velocity and this is at the top velocity of the air. So VT is the top velocity and VB is the bottom velocity. If you notice in this particular case, what happens is the top velocity is VA plus VR. That means the relative velocity between the air and the spinning ball is more velocity at the top and less velocity at the bottom, obviously, right? So there is a difference of this particular flow of the velocity or flow of this air particles in this particular case. Now, as per the Bernoulli's principle, both are actually, so more or less the ball height is almost small, so very small actual ball height. If you notice, and this height actually you can treat at the bottom and the top is exactly the same. And the pressure actually what it is going to derive. Now if you notice the pressure at the top and the pressure at, so this is the pressure at the top and this is the pressure at the bottom. Now if you notice pressure at the top plus half rho V velocity, so this is Vt square should be equal to the pressure at the bottom plus half rho into Vb square, right? Now if you notice here actually at the bottom side actually the velocity is less and at the top side actually the velocity is more. So at the top side this is actually more and at the bottom actually this velocity is less, and that's what actually we proved just now. Obviously if you notice the pressure, right, as the sum of these two has to maintain constant and this pressure at the top is going to be reduced, so that this sum is exactly equal to the sum of these two pressure and the kinetic energy at the bottom. So this is what is the Bernoulli's principle. H actually you can neglect it because rho GH is same on either sides. So if you add it, this is rho GH and this is also rho GH and these two will cancel it out. So we left with the pressure and the kinetic energy per unit mass of the air. Now here if you clearly notice, what is happening is the pressure at the top is reduced and the pressure at the bottom is increased. So here the pressure is more, here the pressure is less. So in this particular spinning ball, now what happens? Automatically this ball will be lifted to the upward direction because the bottom pressure is less and the top pressure is more. Now, so here actually the pressure at the top is less and the pressure at the bottom is more. Hence actually obviously in the case of spinning ball, if it is moving like this, then actually it will automatically take this particular path. So it gets lifted automatically. And this lift actually is unpredictable. And this is actually, now actually you can see how much it is getting lifted. It is very tough to identify. Why? Because suppose if this guy is actually, so suppose one bowler, let us say, he throws the ball with high spin, very high spin. Obviously the relative velocity is more. So the relative velocity at the top is very high and the relative velocity at the bottom is very less. Then actually the spin actually will decide how much it has to fly higher. Suppose this is still be a spinning ball only, but actually the spin velocity is less. That means the relative velocity of the ball and the air actually if it is less, then actually the pressure difference will be small. Obviously the lift of this ball is only till this particular height. So obviously in the case of the spin ball, it is very tough to predict. So that's why actually spinning ballers actually will have a special importance due to this reason of the Bernoulli's principle. Got it? Any questions on this? So this is one of the application, right? So there are other applications also. Suppose actually in the case of the flight, suppose if the flight is flying, right? So the area of cross section of the flight wing, right? So that will be somewhere like this. So this is how actually the area of cross section. So this is not the flight. So this is only the cross sectional view of the wing. So this is the cross sectional view of the wing. Now in this particular case also, if you notice what is happening is, if the air is flowing in this direction, let us say, then if the air is actually flowing in this particular direction, at this bottom level, if you notice, there is a hurdle of this particular air. Obviously, the air will come here and then actually takes the diversion like this. So the air comes here and then actually takes the diversion. During this process, what happens is, here the velocity is reduced because there is an obstacle there. And at the top, actually, if you notice, the air which is coming like this, so this actually takes this particular way and then actually it flows with the usual speed of the air. So as the wing is moving in this direction, due to the obstacle that it is providing for the airflow, though it is moving with very high velocity, so very high velocity actually we flow. Now the air velocity which is coming in the opposite direction, it strikes and then actually takes this turn. Due to that actually it have the less velocity at the bottom and it will have the higher velocity at the top. Obviously, assuming that this is exactly the same height, the flight that is the flight wing top and bottom more or less actually is exactly the same height if you can think of. Again, if you apply the Bernoulli's principle, the top pressure plus half rho into V square at the top is equal to the pressure at the bottom plus half into rho into bottom velocity square. Now these two are actually one and the same. So obviously it is expected that if the velocity at the top is more, the pressure is going to be less. And again, the pressure at this bottom actually obviously it will be more as the velocity is less. So now as the pressure at the bottom is more and the top is less, there is a pressure difference between these two. So this is point A and this is point B. So between A and B, there is a pressure difference. Hence, actually, there will be a dynamic lift that it is going to be provided for the flight. Automatically, if it is moving too fast, then the difference of the pressure is too high. Hence, actually, the flight will be lifted upwards. So it balances the weight of the entire flight. So just due to the wings. So and the wings actually has to move continuously with very high velocity. Then the pressure difference will be very high. Obviously, the lift is going to be happen because the movement of the flight is at very high speed. So this is what we call as the dynamic lift. Right. So this is actually one another example of the Bernoulli's equation. So these are actually two greatest advantages that we can think of. We were able to fly just because of the reason of the Bernoulli's principle. So we can make use of the flights, right? That is one advantage. And another advantage is we can make use of the spin balls so that actually we can make a clean bowl of the batsman. So that is another advantage. But there is a deficiency also. That is, so you know that actually the heart attacks actually most of the times actually it comes. Again, the reason behind the heart attack, again, it is due to the Bernoulli's principle only. That is, the reason behind the heart attack is, so here actually, this is, let us say, the vein or actually the artery of the heart, right? So the blood is actually flowing in this particular direction. As the blood is actually moving in this particular direction, now here actually, due to the cholesterol, there is a blockage of this actually automatically forms. This is the reason behind the cholesterol, right? Cholesterol actually will make a blockage to the flow of the blood. Now, as there is a blockage of the flow, obviously the area of cross section which is available to flow for the blood is actually is less. So, though the vein size is of this size, but actually due to the formation of this cholesterol, what happens is the area of cross section is getting reduced. As the area of cross section is reduced, you know that the continuity equation which states that AV is equal to constant, where A is the area of cross section and V is the velocity of the flow. Suppose here actually, let us say the area of cross section is more, this A value is more, and then the velocity will be less. So A is more and the velocity is less. The AV product is maintained constant. Hence, actually here low velocity will be there. Low velocity. Now here in this particular stage, if you notice, the velocity of the particle is going to be more. The blood velocity is more. V is very high. Because the area of cross section is being it is less. The product of AV should be maintained constant because of the continuity equation. The velocity is increased. Now, as per the Bernoulli's principle, again, if you come back, the Bernoulli's principle actually, so this is half rho V square plus pressure is equal to half rho V square plus the pressure. So if it is P1, then I think this is going to be of P2, V2. Now, if the velocity is increased, obviously, if the velocity is more, the pressure is getting reduced. So at this particular point, if you notice, the pressure is getting reduced. If the pressure gets reduced, then what happens? Automatically, there is an atmospheric pressure actually that is happening on our body. So there is a continuous atmospheric pressure on our body. Hence, actually, as the pressure at this particular point is less, then this vein actually, the size of the vein is getting reduced because here actually high pressure will be there. And here low pressure will be there. So within the vein actually the pressure is reduced and outside the vein there is a very high pressure. Obviously the size is actually coming closer. So the vein size itself actually it will be very close now. and the size of this particular area of cross section is still reduced because actually this is actually blocking. So due to the high pressure at the outside and the low pressure at the inside, the size of the vein is getting reduced. On top of that, there is a cholesterol layer at the bottom, right? At the top and bottom, there is a cholesterol layer. Obviously, the size is still getting reduced. See this? The blockage is still more now. So hence actually the velocity is again increased because the AV is maintained constant. As you have reduced the area of cross section due to the reduction of the pressure, and the outside pressure actually will try to press it further, then actually the velocity it wanted to increase more. Then actually what happens is again the pressure is getting reduced. Again the pressure outside is still more, it will try to congest again, and then actually due to this actually there is a heavy force that is going to be established on the artery, right? Artery actually, so there is a heavy force, it has to pump with a huge force. So finally it blocks it and no path for the flow of the blood. Then that's what we call that as the heart attack, right? So this is actually the increase of the cholesterol. It makes use of the Bernoulli's principle, and finally it makes the person to die with heart attack. Got it? So this is the reason behind any heart attack, right? Any questions on this? So these are all some of the applications of this Bernoulli's principle, right? Okay. So this is the dynamics part of the fluid. And the next is actually the viscosity, which is one of the fundamental property of any fluid, right? So this viscosity actually, so we can say that actually whenever there is a fluid or any kind of liquid that you can think of, you think of this case. Let us take water, oil, honey, and grease. You take off all the three, all the four. Now here actually, this actually, it is very less viscous. And this is little more. So this is actually the smallest, and this is less, and this is far less, and this is, sorry, less viscous. And this is very high viscous. Fluid. Now you notice that actually the flow in this particular water is, this is actually very liberal, and this is very tough. So in the case of grease, actually if you keep the grease at one stage, so that is still be the liquid, but actually there won't be any flow of the grease, right? But if you take water, if you pour the water, actually automatically it starts moving from one location to another location. Now if you take oil, it still have the capability to move from one location to another location, but it is not as good as water. And you take honey, so honey also is having the capability to move from one location to another location, but actually it is not as good as water or oil. So the viscosity is, so rigidness, or actually rigidness to move from one location to another location, that is how actually you can think of the viscosity. Now scientifically, if you want to define this particular nature, why it is coming and how it is established and what is the way we can measure this viscosity, all those things actually we need to be answering so that actually you can understand this viscosity concept. Now the main difference between any solid and a liquid, you can think of. What is the main difference between the solid and a liquid? What can we think of the difference between a solid and liquid? Any answer? Right? So the main difference is shear force. So the shear force is, suppose actually if there is a block of mass like this, on this actually if you apply a force on top of it, so you applied a force on top of it, obviously it is expected that there is a deviation of this top block from its initial position for an amount of delta x. So there is a deviation of this top position from here to here because actually you are applying this force on this particular direction. Now here actually shear stress is shear force divided by the area of cross section. So shear force is this force. Usually, actually, whenever we apply the force, you take the block of the mass, you try to apply the force here, or you try to apply the force on top of this. But here, actually, there is a force exactly parallel and on the surface of this particular body. And this force is called as the shear force. It's not perpendicular. Usually, we apply the force perpendicular. Then, actually, we feel a bigger effect. But that may not be the case always. So, that is actually if there is a sliding force. Suppose, actually, there is a, let us say, this kind of, so playground is there, let us say. Now this actually, if one person sits here, then actually automatically he drags to this particular point. Now here actually, there is a force of downward direction. There is a counter frictional force that is on top of this, right? So there is a counter force in the upward direction, and this guy actually moves and slides till this particular point. So here in this particular case, the force that is going to be applied in this particular direction. So the mass of this person is m, then actually mg is the weight which is downward, and there is a component of the force along this particular direction. Let us say if it is making an angle of theta, then mg cos theta is the force in this particular direction, and this force is absorbed by a surface area. Let us say there is an area of this particular surface where the person is sitting, and this area is A. Then this particular force divided by this particular area. So this is called as the shear stress. So this is the shear stress. Due to the shear stress on any particular body, whether it may be a solid, liquid, or gases, whatever it may be, here when the force is in this particular direction, obviously every particle within this particular body will have some level of deviation. And the deviation actually at the end you can easily make out this moved from this location to this location for an amount of delta x. And this delta x out of this height, obviously this height actually makes a lot of importance in this particular case. Suppose if I take a block of very small vessels and if I take a block of very high. Now here actually if I try applying this force, then actually it is very high possibility that more level of shear less. So this length is going to be more in the case if the height is more. And here in this particular case, it is very tough to drag because this height is less. So the ratio would give delta x divided by L, where L is this height, and this is what is called as the shear strain. So this is the shear strain. So this is the shear stress and this is the shear strain. The main difference between a solid and a liquid is solid actually it's a fixed body. Hence actually the shear stress is constant. So shear strain is constant. Once you calculate the shear strain for that material, it is maintained constant. But in the case of liquid, what happens is the flow of the liquid, if you can think of what is happening is, so this is the water flow. Now, in this particular case, the top layer is moving with a higher velocity, let us say V1, and then the bottom layer actually is moving with another velocity, let us say V2, and then the third layer actually is having a velocity of V3, and then V4. At the bottom actually, you know that this is going to be of the velocity 0, which is exactly in touch with the surface of the bottom. Now here, this velocity usually V1 is more, and then V2, and then V3, and then V4, and then V5, right? So this is how actually the velocity of the layers is distributed. And this level of this kind of flow, actually there is one more term called the laminar flow. This is called as the laminar flow, right? So laminar flow, and here if you notice, there is a relative velocity between the layers of the fluid. Layers of the fluid, right? So there is a relative velocity between the layers of the fluid. Obviously, if at all there is a relative velocity, there will be a frictional force that is going to be developed. So this is, so there will be a frictional force that will be developed right? So there will be a frictional force that is going to be developed between the layers of this particular fluid. Now, if you talk about the shear stress and shear strain, suppose actually this is one cross-sectional area that you can think of, then as this layer is moving, obviously there is a delta x, which is nothing but the displacement of this particle till this particular point, and this displacement divided by this height. So this is called as the shear stress. Shear strain is equal to delta x divided by L, that is the shear strain. Now, is the shear strain constant in the case of fluid? In the case of solids, it is constant because actually it moves to some extent and this stays there. Whatever may be the force you apply, so that will stay for that particular material as long as you apply the force, right? Now, here in this particular case, this particle is moved from here to here, but actually it never stayed there. It will move further also. Then actually it moves further. It moves further. Then actually it keeps on moves. That means there is a velocity that is going to be associated with this particular particle. Now, if you take the with respect to time, so that is shear strain per unit time. So shear strain per unit time, and this is equal to 1 by L times of delta x by delta t, obviously, right? So this is shear strain per unit time. So this is what we call as there is rate of shear strain. And obviously there is a rate of shear strain, that is in 1 second actually how much displacement this particle is moved, that is the displacement that we can think of. So now this, if you notice, 1 by L times of delta x by delta t, and this is what actually we usually treat as the rate of change of displacement of the particle, which is nothing but the velocity. So this is the velocity. Now this velocity per unit length, so velocity per unit length, and this is called as rate of shear strain. So rate of shear strain, this is nothing but V by L. So V by L is the shear strain, where L is this height and the velocity of the particle at the top is of delta x by delta t. So this is the velocity. Velocity by L is called as the rate of shear strain. Now stress by strain, that's what actually Hooke's law we state. Now in this particular case, this ratio of shear stress by rate of shear strain, and this is what is defined as viscosity coefficient. So viscosity coefficient, and this is what is force by area divided by V by L, or this is FL by AV, and this is usually represented with a letter called eta. So this is called as eta, right? So this is the viscosity coefficient, the coefficient of viscosity. And this is exactly the way we measure the viscosity. Now, if you apply more stress, obviously it is expected that more value of the viscosity is going to be there. See this? So eta value is directly proportional to the force and is inversely proportional to the L, and AV. So this is the area of cross section at the top, and V is the velocity of the particle. Now all these factors actually will influence the rate of viscosity or the coefficient of the viscosity, which is nothing but F by L. Got it? Just a minute. Right? Yeah. So this is what is defined as the viscosity. Obviously, it is expected that rigidness of the fluid particles to move from one location to another location is dependent on this particular value. So if it is more, the viscosity is more, then actually it is very tough to move the particles from one location to another location. Now in the case of grease, actually if you notice, the particles of the grease actually, suppose if this is the block of the grease and there is still, if you apply a force on top of this, this particle is getting moved automatically as the force is applied on top of it. But the way it moves is quite different. If I take a film of water like this, on top of that, actually, if I apply the same force, it will be easy for you to move from this location to this location. So here actually, if you apply the force, then actually it is easy in this particular case. And this is actually very less, so very tough to move. It is very tough to move. Hence actually, this is high viscous fluid. This is the low viscous fluid. And this eta value is more in this particular case. The eta value is less in the bottom case. So this is less in the case of the water. So this will be a measure how the fluid is behaving in the dynamics of the flow, right? Got it? Any questions on this? Any questions? The next concept is the Stokes law. This Stokes law, suppose actually you take one particular case. Suppose there is a bowl here and there is a water in this particular case. And then actually there is a ball actually I dropped at this particular location, and this ball actually will go downwards, right? The ball actually will go downwards. Now obviously, as the ball is specifically having its own mass, and this mass actually continuously moves from the top to the bottom, right? So now there will be a counter force that is going to be developed on this particular ball. Now this ball actually, as it is moving, there is a relative velocity between the layers of the fluid and this particular mass. So there will be a, when the ball is dropped, within the water, then there will be a counter force that will be developed on the ball. There will be a counter force that will be developed on the ball. And then suppose if the ball is moving with high velocity, obviously the force of the friction or the relative velocity causes the frictional force always. Hence actually there will be a frictional force that is going to be developed on this. So this is the frictional force F, I say. So as the velocity of the ball is more, the opposite directional force is more. So that we can even feel when we move in the air itself. Suppose actually if you are moving on a bike, if you go with a higher velocity, obviously there will be a counter force that is coming on our body in the form of the air. So we are moving within the air. So you are crossing the air layers and then actually trying to move it. Obviously, due to the relative velocity between our body and the air, there will be a frictional force that is going to be developed on our body. Hence actually our bike velocity is getting reduced, obviously, right? And this velocity actually, if you talk about it in the water or within the air, it doesn't matter. But actually, as long as you move relative to this particular fluid, right? Now, the frictional force is always proportional to the velocity. So that is one important aspect. The frictional force is always proportional to the velocity. And if you notice, that is always in the opposite direction also. That you can think of. So that will be always in the opposite direction. And this is one important factor. And one more important factor is this frictional force is even dependent on the diameter of this particular ball. So the diameter is also one important character of this particular ball while moving from top to the bottom, because the surface area that it is going to be causing the relative motion is of this entire area. Indirectly, this surface area is dependent on the diameter. Hence, actually, this is even dependent on the diameter also. So this is one more important factor, so which is nothing but the diameter. And then one more important factor is, just a minute. Yeah. So another important factor is the viscosity. So the viscosity will be a counter force actually that it is going to be developing. So this is, suppose actually the same ball if you put in the water versus the ball actually if you put on oil versus the ball if you put on the honey or if you put on the grease, right? Now in all the cases actually in grease actually it won't allow to move. Obviously it is not allowing. Actually it is applying more counter force, hence actually it is stopping then and there itself. In oil actually it applies the counter force more because the viscosity of oil is more, hence actually it is going to apply. Now this is nothing but this force, if you ignore the sign, because actually this force is anyway the opposite force that everybody knows, this is actually some constant k multiplied by v into d into eta. So this is F is equal to v into d into eta, and this k value is 6 pi. So 6 pi v into d into eta, and this is what is called as the Stokes law. Stokes law, right? So this actually 6 pi based on the heuristic methods. I hope you are aware of what is heuristic method. Heuristic method meaning, so that is actually based on the experience actually we came to a conclusion. So this is what is true. Suppose actually just think of this, when mother is actually cooking curry, right, automatically she puts some random amount of the salt and then keeps it, but that is actually more or less almost every time actually it is sufficient. So that is based on the experience only, but actually there is no way actually we measure that how much salt she is putting, right? Obviously that we don't know, but randomly she keeps and then actually tries to put it, then automatically actually we get the equal salt, right? So that is based on the experience only. So based on the Stokes experience actually he concluded that this is what is the constant value 6 pi, and this 6 pi multiplied by the velocity of the particles, velocity of the ball and diameter of the ball and the viscosity of the fluid, this will decide the counter force that is acting on this particular ball to move from the top to the bottom. So there is a force, and this force is even be called as the retarding force. So this is called as the retarding force. Retarding, so acceleration opposite is retardation. So retarding force meaning it is trying to reduce the velocity of the particle. Now this actually will try to reduce the velocity of the particle, and then suppose actually let us say you put this particular ball, an iron ball, let us say, on the ocean, actually you dropped that iron ball. Now actually on the ocean if you drop the iron ball from the ship, then actually it goes almost to the kilometers within the fluid itself. Now, can I say that the ball actually will travel with the same velocity from the top to the bottom of the ocean? Suppose actually this ocean is actually this particular bottom. Now here actually this ball started from here, then actually it started with 0 velocity. Obviously actually it tries to raise its velocity because of the gravity automatically, and then actually so it acquires certain velocity, and then actually is the velocity keeps on increases, or actually it stays at a constant velocity, or actually it stays at 0 velocity. So what will be the velocity of the particle? You think of this case also. So dropping a ball within the ocean, or so from the sky actually when the rain is happening, the water drop actually started from the sky, so it is coming to the downwards, right? Now we always proved that in the case of mechanics, if the ball is actually started from the sky, then actually on the sky actually let us say it is having a mass of m, and then actually we dropped from the sky and this is coming till the ground. Now it started with 0 velocity, initial velocity is of 0, then actually it keeps raising its velocity because there is an acceleration due to gravity g. Obviously you know that the velocity of the particle at any instant, if you notice, v is equal, so v square minus u square is equal to 2as. So 2as, so in this particular case is h, right? Now the initial velocity being 0, then v square is equal to 2gh, and then actually v is equal to of 2gh, right? V is equal to of 2gh under root. Now based on this understanding actually we are calculating with what velocity the ball is actually coming from the top of the sky to the bottom of the earth here. So this is actually the earth surface. On the earth surface actually it is coming. Obviously actually as the height is more, the velocity is going to be more, This you can prove it the other way also. So that is the displacement that it is going to be traveling. So this is ut plus half at square. So this is u is 0, then actually half gt square. So this is the displacement that it is going to travel. Now if you notice, in the first second, it traveled a displacement of only half g. And the second, if you notice, it traveled a displacement of half gt square, where t equal to 2. That means 4 times of the previous displacement. So if you subtract the previous displacement, let us say in the first second, if it traveled for 1 meter, in the second second, actually it travels for 3 meters. In the third second, actually it travels for, so this is almost, so 1 plus 4. So this is actually 5 meters actually it travels. Again, actually, in the next second, actually, it travels for 7 meters. So this is the odd number actually it comes, right? Now here, if you notice, what is happening is, so in each second, actually, the displacement it traveled is keep on increasing. That means within 1 second, actually, this velocity is less. Obviously, it is expected because the displacement traveled in second is 1 meter only. In the second, it traveled from here to here. And this, if you notice, in 1 second, it traveled for 3 meters. That means the velocity is raised to 3 times. Again, actually, from here to here, actually, it traveled again within 1 second, actually, it traveled 5 meters. That means actually this is 5 meters per second, and this is 3 meters per second. This is 1 meter per second. If you notice, the velocities keep on raising as and when the time keeps on increases every second. So there is a continuous increase in the velocity. The reason behind this velocity is because of this acceleration due to gravity. So acceleration due to gravity, it raises the velocity because that is the acceleration. Now, with this understanding, till now in mechanics, actually, we solved the problem. But is this 100% correct? Always may not be. Why? Because we are ignoring the air friction in this particular case. So that air friction needs to be considered. Suppose if the water drop, which is due to the rain actually coming from the top of the sky, so such a far distance, if you can think of, see with what velocity it comes out. Suppose actually raindrop, which was started at the top of the sky, and then let us say it traveled for 1 hour and then actually it came to the ground. Now 1 hour actually it assumes that 3600 seconds. So 3600 seconds, if you notice, then actually the displacement that it is going to travel, so this is going to be a 3600 whole square. This is very, very big number. Obviously, the displacement that it is going to travel is very high. Then obviously, as the h value is more, the velocity is very, very high. That means if it starts with 0 velocity, by the time it comes to the ground, it might have a velocity of almost maybe 1000 kilometers per hour or actually 10,000 kilometers per hour also. That is very huge velocity. With that velocity, if the raindrop hits our body, then actually it automatically goes into the body like a bullet. But is it happening? Obviously, it's not happening, right? So such a huge velocity it assumes by the time it comes to the ground, but it's not happening. The reason behind why it is not happening is because of this counter force to the velocity that is going to be developed due to the Stokes law. What it says is, it is the viscosity of the fluid and the diameter of the water drop and the velocity of the particle. These velocities will decide how much is the retarding force that is automatically developed due to the velocity of the particle it is coming. So if you are raising the velocity, there will be a counter force that is going to be developed that we ourselves experience when we are traveling on the bike, right? So as it is raising its velocity, obviously we know that actually the frictional force in the counter direction is also increasing to a greater extent. So due to this particular reason, as the counter force is developed, then it is expected that, so here actually the downward force of this body is only m into g, which is the downward force, which is nothing but the weight of the body. And this downward force is experiencing a counter force in the opposite direction due to the relative velocity between the layers of this ball and this atmosphere. So atmosphere is air in this particular case. So the counter force it is going to develop is 6 pi into v into d into eta, where eta is the viscosity of the air and d is the diameter of the ball size, or the, in this particular case, water drop, so which is in the spherical shape, the diameter of it, and the velocity is with which actually it is falling down. Now actually there is one particular case. See this, if mg is exactly equal to the counter force. So this is actually the force of the counter force, which is nothing but the retarding force. So if the weight of the particle is equal to the retarding force developed, then there won't be any more acceleration. There won't be any more acceleration. Of the particle or of the ball, or actually water drop. So the weight is actually in the downward direction, but there is a retarding force that it is going to develop. This is going to be of 6 pi times of eta into v into d. Now at this particular stage, obviously if these two are equal, then as per Newton's first law, so every body tries to stay in its state of rest or of uniform motion unless otherwise it is compelled by an external force. That is the statement of the Newton's first law. Now here actually this force and this force actually are equal now. So if it is equal, then actually there won't be any force on the water drop. So initially the water drop, which was started here at the top of the sky, until this point actually it raises its velocity. Then actually as it raises its velocity, there will be a retarding force that is going to be developed. Then actually this retarding force and this, so the weight of this particular body, both are equal. If you notice, the retarding force is directly proportional to the velocity. You raise the velocity, the force is developed in the opposite direction also. Obviously it is expected that if you keep on raise the velocity, then there will be one instant where the velocity is such a way that actually the retarding force and the weight are balanced out automatically. So these two, mg and this is 6 pi times of eta into v into d, these two has to be equal at one point, obviously. And when it is equal, then actually let us say it is having certain velocity when these two are equal, because if you notice the viscosity of the air is constant and the diameter of the bar is constant, the only factor that is responsible in raising the retarding force is only the velocity. So now if these two are equal, now the velocity won't be raised further. Why? Because if it raises, meaning the retarding force is more, that means the counter way the acceleration is going to be applied. But is that happening? So if that is what is happening, if we still raises the velocity, then what happens? The counter force actually it is trying to push the water drop upwards. That means water will not come to the ground, it will go upwards again. Is that happening? So rain will always come to the ground. It won't go upwards because actually the retarding force, it shouldn't be more than the weight of the particle, obviously. So if it is more, then actually it automatically raises to the upwards. So the velocity is caused due to the acceleration due to gravity. And again, this velocity is causing the retardation also. Hence, actually, it will assume one value where these two are equal. So if these two are equal and that velocity is maintained constant, because that velocity is responsible for both the weight and the viscosity force, or actually the retarding force. So this velocity is maintained constant at that stage as both the forces are getting equal. Hence actually there won't be any further acceleration, or hence there won't be any further force, as there is no force as per Newton's first law. So it will try to maintain a constant velocity because there is no force, both are actually cancelled out, maintains a constant velocity. And this velocity is called as the terminal velocity. And this is maintained constant. And this terminal velocity is the one actually by the time it comes to the ground. So the water is actually, the water drops of the drain actually is having the velocity of the terminal velocity only. That value is very, very less, because these two are getting equal at the top of the sky itself. By the time it comes to 100 meters or so, then actually the counter force is getting developed, and then actually these two are balanced out, and the terminal velocity is maintained constant, and with that velocity actually the water drop comes from the sky. So you can conclude that from the sky to the ground, the water is coming with a constant velocity. It's not like the way we have calculated in the case of mechanics, the velocities keep on rising, which is not true. So these are all the factors actually we are ignoring in the mechanics, but these are the things that you need to consider whenever actually we are talking about where the forces are actually such a huge level of impact on the way we are analyzing it. So this velocity is maintained. Now this terminal velocity even we calculated. But if you notice, what is happening is we are considering the weight of this particular body. Now, in this particular case, if you notice, this is the water. Let us take a different example. Let us say this is the sea. In the sea, actually, we dropped a ball like this. Now, when the ball is moving in this downward direction, obviously, let us say the ball is coming to this particular location. Now, here, earlier, actually, it used to be water. Now, actually, this water is occupied. So, this water actually, the place of the water is occupied by the ball. So, the place is occupied by the ball. Now, the effective weight of this ball is actually the weight of this particular ball minus the weight of the water that got displayed. So, this is the volume. Let us say this is a spherical shape. So, this is a spherical shape. Then, the volume of any sphere is 4/3 pi r cube. So, let us say diameter, so radius is a, let us say 4/3 actually pi a cube, which is the volume of this particular ball, and then volume multiplied by the density of the ball. So this I call this as B, density of the ball, which is nothing but the mass of this particular ball minus mass of this particular place where the water got displayed out, or actually the water got so dispersed from that particular location, and that water mass is 4/3 pi into a cube into rho of the water, let us say. So this is 4/3 pi into a cube into rho B minus rho W. So ball minus water. Now in this particular case of the raindrop, if you notice, so here actually the mass of water, and this I call this as rho, and the mass, so on the density of the air actually if you call this as sigma, so rho m minus sigma, which is nothing but the effective value that you can consider, that is the mass density difference of the particle which is traveling and the medium. So here rho m minus sigma, now this value is the effective mass that it is contributed when it is moving from top to bottom. Now the acceleration due to gravity is g. Now this value is 4/3 pi into a cube into rho minus sigma into g. This value is equal to 6 pi times of eta into 2a into terminal velocity Vt. Now Vt value actually you can calculate. So this is 2 times, this is 3 times. This pi will cancel, and this is a square times. So sigma rho minus sigma times of g into a square divided by 3, and then into 3 into eta. This is equal to Vt. So the terminal velocity Vt is equal to rho minus sigma times of g a square divided by 9 eta. So this is the terminal velocity. Now if you notice, 9 is a constant, eta is the viscosity of the medium, and rho is the density of the water, and sigma is the density of the air, and then g is the acceleration due to gravity. If you notice, the terminal velocity is directly proportional to the square of the radius of the ball. So the terminal velocity, which is nothing but with which the water is coming, is proportional to the square of the radius. Got it? So this is what is the terminal velocity. Do you have any questions on this? When the ball is actually coming from the top to bottom, so this is how actually the velocity is calculated. Right? So in the textbook actually, rather than the diameter, actually he took the area, so A itself, which is the radius. In that case actually it comes twice. Got it? Yeah. So this is actually, rather than diameter, actually he has taken the value as A, because actually the radius, so just a constant multiplication, it will not make any difference in the formula. Got it?